Hello, beautiful people. My name is Dimpo, and welcome back to MindChats, where we're going to be talking about teen mental health until it is no longer cringe, weird, or taboo. Now, today we're tapping or diving into something super important, which is the teenage brain and its development. Now, have you ever wondered why teens are impulsive, emotional, or seem easily stressed out? Why their decision making is sometimes questionable, and what actually happens when stress or trauma hits during this critical time. Whether you're a teen yourself, a parent, an educator, or just curious, this video will break it all down for you. Let's dive in, shall we? The first thing that I want to say is that going through puberty is hard, and obviously that makes parenting a human that is going through puberty hard as well. I do not personally know of any teen or parent that is saying that it is an easy road, because it is not. So if you are a teen or a parent to a teen, I take my hat off to you, and I'm sending you all the strength and positive energy that you need, because you need it. You're going through it.
Woo! I'm going through it.
The second thing I want to mention, and it's mainly to give a reminder that we have all been through puberty. And although being a teenager in this day and age is very different from 10, 15, 20 years ago, we can all appreciate how unpredictable living in a rapidly developing body and mind is. They literally have little control over the construction and development that is happening to them. So if you can imagine a construction site and everything that goes on there, right? There's dust, there's noise, old things are being taken out, new things are being put in. One minute you like the way it's looking, and the next minute you hate it. It is pure chaos. And that's exactly how puberty goes and how it feels. So our first focus for this video is going to be the basic structure of the teenage brain and the key parts that are involved in the entire process. The first part that we're going to be talking about is the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for higher order cognitive functions like planning, decision making, and executive functions. It also plays a role in working memory, personality, and social behavior. Now, believe it or not, this is the part of the brain that develops last. So if you had to guess, at what age do you think the brain stops developing? Put your guesses in the comment section below, and the answer will be towards the end of the video. Now, going back to the fact that the prefrontal cortex manages things like planning and decision making, it would then make sense why teens sometimes make questionable decisions. They physically do not have the facilities to process things logically and make decisions that an adult would be able to make. Another important function of the prefrontal cortex is in regulating emotional responses and suppressing impulsive actions, which simply means that teens tend to act on emotion and not rational thinking. Okay, they will get an idea and execute it without putting thought into the potential consequences. So to all those parents that have yelled at their teen or shamed them for making bad decisions,
Bombastic side eye. Criminal offensive side eye.
no matter what speech you give them, it will not make their decision making more logical. So you just have to be patient with them, okay? Which leads us to the next structure of the brain, which is the amygdala. And this part of the brain is a major center for processing emotions, particularly those related to fear, anxiety, and aggression. Now, this part of the brain acts as a threat detector and mood regulator, shaping our emotional and behavioral responses to the world around us. Now, this speaks to the fight and flight response that triggers the body's physiological response to perceived threats, including the release of hormones and increased heart rate. Now, this, again, can have an impact on the decisions that they make, especially in risky situations, like being exposed to alcohol, smoking drugs, and even sexual behaviors. With that said, although there are negative risks, there can also be positive ones. So if your teen, for example, is anxious about trying out for the school musical and they decide to do so and end up being chosen for the role, that can be a teaching opportunity as well. It is important to be constantly having conversation with your teens about the decisions that they make and almost doing a reflection with them afterwards on the after effects of their decisions. Keeping in mind that you're probably going to have to do this over and over and over again. Okay, so the onus is not on your teen to get with the program faster. The onus is on you to not lose patience and remind yourself that they're doing the best that they can with the cognitive functions that they have. The third and final structure that we're going to touch on is called the hippocampus, and this part of the brain is responsible for memory and learning. It plays an important role in how teens process information and form memories. During this period, the hippocampus is highly responsive to learning and can be influenced by various factors like stress, diet, exercise, impacting their cognitive function. Now, adolescence is a time of heightened sensitivity to stress, which can affect the hippocampus's process of generating new neurons in the brain and potentially impact long-term cognitive function. Substance use during adolescence can also affect the hippocampus, potentially leading to long-term consequences for memory and cognitive function. Now I want to touch on something called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's amazing ability to reorganize and change its structure and function in response to experiences and learning. So all of this development that is happening makes the teen years a time of heightened neuroplasticity. It provides an opportunity for shaping positive and negative behavioral and development. This means that your teen's brain is growing through the process of eliminating unnecessary connection and reinforcing connections that improve the efficiency of brain function. The heightened plasticity of the teen brain also makes adolescents more sensitive to adversity and potentially open to negative influences. But it also creates a window of opportunity for positive intervention and support. So what does this mean practically? Okay, this means that the habits and experiences that you create for your teen, as well as the ones that they create for themselves, will have a huge impact on how their brain turns out in the end. So, how does trauma and stress affect the teenage brain? First, it would be helpful to define stress and trauma. Stress is defined as a state of feeling overwhelmed or experiencing mental and physical tension due to a challenging situation or a perceived lack of control. Stress can be short-term, episodic, or long-term, and it affects both mental and physical well-being. It can lead to anxiety, irritability, difficulty concentrating, headaches, upset stomach, and sleep problems as well. Trauma is defined by the author of The Body Keeps the Score as an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, altering the way that we process and recall memories. He adds that trauma is not just about the past event, but it is a current imprint of the event on the mind, body, and brain. It is essentially the ongoing impact of the past event on an individual's ongoing life and well-being. Stress and trauma can have a significant impact on the developing brain and resulting in various consequences. Now, these can increase a teen's risk of mental health disorders like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. It can also affect their general cognitive functioning, including their memory, decision-making, and their ability to learn. Now, going back to the amygdala and its role in emotional regulation, trauma and stress can place the amygdala in a constant hyperactive state, making it difficult to regulate emotions. An amazing book to read should you want to gain more information on the effects of trauma and stress is the book that I mentioned a few moments ago, which is The Body Keeps the Score. Now you might be thinking, if my teen has experienced a traumatic event or they have recently been diagnosed with something like anxiety, does that mean that their brain will not develop properly or that it will never heal? And the question is not entirely. It is super important that your teen receives as much support as possible, and this includes being in supportive environments, getting the necessary therapy, and being part of healthy relationships that will provide a safe space for their healing. Because positive experiences have the ability to rewire the brain and rewrite the script that already exists. Yeah, that was a lot of information, and some of these have many layers to them, which might be covered in more detail in future videos. Which reminds me, which age did you guess for the completion of brain development? If you guessed any age from mid to late 20s, you were spot on. The brain only completes its development towards the end of one's 20s, which means that it is over 10 years of construction that takes place, and you can make the choice to add positive experiences and therefore have a positive impact on the developing brain. Now, because I'm an occupational therapist, my priority is to share information that will relate to the daily functioning of your teen, their ability to show up as a family member, a sibling, a learner, and a teammate. Now, if you want to get into the finer details of the science behind the brain, I will have a few videos linked below. I know that I have shared a lot of things that show just how vulnerable teens can be, but I also want to remind you that your teen has the ability to be resilient. They have it in them to get through their development with a strong sense of identity and coping skills needed to go into adulthood and be absolute champs at it. So now let's get into the practical tips that you and your teen can tap into. If you're a guardian or caregiver to a teen, my first advice to you would be to take a chill pill. I need you to take it easy. I need you to relax, okay?
Stop it. Get some help.
Because in as much as teens can be a lot of things and feel a lot of things, they can also be super nonchalant, which means that sometimes you are wasting your breath, blowing hot air, all for nothing. So do your best to keep calm and be consistent in your efforts. On some days, your efforts will be appreciated and even reciprocated, and on other days, you'll be as significant as a drop of water in the ocean. But consistency is the name of the game. My second tip, which is the most important one, and if you forget everything else from this video, I want you to remember this. Validate their emotions. Do not dismiss their emotions. One of the most harmful things that you could do as a parent is to invalidate your teen's emotions and make them feel as if they are being too sensitive. What this will do is that it will negatively impact how and when they choose to communicate their emotions in future. Because trust me, I've seen many cases of parents not knowing that their teen is struggling, and they find out either through the school counselor or even worse, when they notice that their teen has been harming themselves. Remember that every teen's experience is different. So no comparisons to siblings, no judgment, just an open mind and open ears. My last tip for parents would be that you need to have conversations and create situations where you are encouraging safe, risk-taking behavior and independence. Now, I'm not saying you should allow your 15-year-old to have a glass of wine every time you go out for dinner, okay? And I'm talking to you, Debbie. Debbie, you need to stop doing that, okay? What this means is that you encourage them to engage in activities that have a somewhat controlled level of danger, and that in turn will foster personal growth, skill development, and exploration while minimizing potential harm. So for example, if your son likes adrenaline rush activities, they can express this by going go-karting, or you allow them to start mountain biking, okay? Instead of, them stealing your car and going for a joyride, because they can and will do it. So if you are a teen, here are my tips to you. Build healthy habits, all right? This includes learning to rest and taking days off when feeling unwell or overwhelmed. We are a reflection of our habits. So if you are always locking yourself up in your room, not getting exercise or any sunlight, you are going to look like an unkept troll doll. So make sure that you are doing things that are good for you and your overall health. That means getting enough sleep, creating an enjoyable hygiene routine. Make sure that you are eating all your meals so that your body and brain have the fuel that it needs to function and develop. Build habits and a routine that will ensure that your overall health gets some input. Now, at a later stage, I will be doing a full video on the benefits of a routine or a schedule. My second tip will be to engage in some mindfulness activities. Now, I am aware that mindfulness is not always an easy thing to engage in, especially if your trauma is still new and your body is still in fight or flight. But engaging in mindfulness activities helps us to focus on the present moment, letting go of distractions and anything that may be causing us stress or anxiety in the moment, especially when you find yourself overthinking. Now, this can be mindful coloring, taking a walk and focusing on what you're experiencing through your senses, journaling, yoga, paced breathing, or any activity that requires some level of concentration like crocheting, painting, or drawing. And my last and most important tip is to let you know that it is more than okay to ask for help when you are struggling. There is bravery in saying that you are overwhelmed and cannot handle it all on your own. So talk to a trusted adult, okay? Whether that is a parent, an aunt, a grandparent, a school counselor, a math teacher, your rugby coach. literally anyone, because getting things off your chest is one of the best ways to start managing the stress and noise that can exist in our minds. Well, that's a wrap on today's deep dive into the teenage brain and its development. Remember that the teenage brain goes through a lot of construction, and that is an amazing opportunity for positive intervention and support. Yes, stress and trauma can leave a mark, but the brain is incredibly resilient and change is always possible. If you found this helpful, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Share it with someone who you think might need to hear this today. I'd love to hear from you, so drop a comment below about your experiences or any questions that you may have. As always, my name is Dimpo, and this was MindChats.